This is Unhustling with Luis Baez. There's a certain high that comes from being busy, that constant motion, that dopamine rush that you get from checking boxes and answering emails. It feels productive. It feels important. It feels safe until one day you wake up and realize you've been running full speed in a circle. I used to confuse motion with meaning. As long as I was doing something, I felt valuable, even if the thing I was doing didn't actually move me forward. I'd open my laptop at 6 a.m. and tell myself, let's get ahead of the day. Then suddenly it'd be midnight and I was way behind anyway. My to-do list was a hydra. I'd cross one thing off and then three more would appear. And the wildest part was I was praised for it. Bosses, colleagues, even friends would say, "You're always on your grind, Luis, you're killing it." And I'd smile like, yeah, I am killing it. But I was really just killing myself. When I worked in Silicon Valley, the bar for productivity was inhumane. Meetings stacked like Tetris, Slack channels buzzing at all hours, and everyone pretending like burnout was a badge of honor. You'd see someone brag about sending a 2 a.m. email like they just discovered fire. People wore exhaustion like it was couture. And look, I played right into it because for a long time, my productivity was my personality. If I wasn't producing, who even was I? That's the trap. You start believing that your worth lies in your workload, that if you slow down, the world will forget that you exist, that if you don't keep up, you'll get left behind. But progress without peace is just performance. There was this week that I'll never forget. I was leading a big enablement rollout for a global sales organization. We'd been planning it for months. Late nights, tight deadlines, high stakes. When launch week finally came, everything that could go wrong did. Files got corrupted, Zoom links didn't work, the VP panicked. And there I was in the middle of the chaos, trying to hold it all together with duct tape and charisma. We pulled it off, technically, but the day after, I remember sitting in my car in the parking lot, staring at my steering wheel like, why do I feel nothing? All that effort, all that striving, all that progress. And I didn't even feel proud because the win didn't mean anything anymore. It wasn't growth. It was survival. That's when I started auditing my effort. I asked myself, why am I so addicted to progress? And the answer hit hard because being in motion kept me from feeling my emotions. If I stayed busy, I didn't have to deal with the loneliness, the pressure, the fear that maybe I wasn't as impressive as I wanted people to believe. So I stayed in constant motion because silence felt like exposure. But here's what I learned the hard way. Productivity is not purpose. And constant progress doesn't mean you're growing. It just means that you haven't stopped moving long enough to notice that you're tired. Once I started questioning that pattern, I made some uncomfortable changes. I stopped measuring my days by how much I got done. I started asking, did I feel aligned? Did I stay present? Did I move one thing forward that actually mattered? I replaced my to-do list with a to-feel list. Peace, clarity, focus. If the day didn't give me those, I knew I wasn't working. I was coping. I cut meetings that didn't serve a purpose. I created blocks on the calendar and I labeled them white space. That's time to think, to breathe, to just be. And in that space, I started hearing myself again. One of my clients once told me, Luis, I feel like I'm working harder than ever, but not moving forward. And I told her, you're not supposed to be a machine. You're supposed to be a messenger. Machines run 24/7. Messengers deliver what matters. So if you're listening to this right now and you've been living inside your inbox, always chasing that next dopamine hit of accomplishment, I see you. But I want you to know you can't outsource meaning to metrics. You can hit every goal, every milestone, and still feel empty if you never stop to ask why. Unhustling is brought to you by bookedbusypaid.com, the home of systems that support your sanity. If your business is scaling faster than your energy, it's not a motivation problem, it's a systems problem. At bookedbusypaid.com, I partner with founders to build the structure that turns chaos into clarity and growth into peace. Because building a business you love shouldn't cost you the life you're trying to protect. Visit bookbusypaid.com to start freeing up your time today. Now, if you've been chasing constant progress, I want to leave you with this reflection. Think of one area in your life that looks successful on paper, but secretly drains you. Then ask yourself, what would I do differently if peace was my KPI? For me, I'd stop taking every meeting that came my way just because someone thought I'd be good for the conversation. I'd stop saying yes to projects that made my chest tight the second I saw them on my calendar. I'd stop performing competence in rooms that didn't even respect my presence. Because here's what I realized. Every time I prioritized being impressive over being at peace, I lost a piece of myself. So I started treating peace like a performance metric. If a project, a person, a commitment cost me my calm, then it didn't make the cut. And you know what's wild? My income didn't drop. My reputation didn't suffer. My opportunities didn't dry up. I just started attracting people who valued the same thing I did: depth over noise. Next question. What would I stop forcing if my worth wasn't tied to my performance? This one made me sit with myself for a minute because if I'm being honest, I'd stop forcing conversations with people who only valued me when I was useful. I'd stop forcing my way into spaces that required me to shrink just to fit. I'd stop forcing productivities on days when my body was begging to rest. I spent years believing that if I wasn't producing, I wasn't worthy. And that belief made me tolerate so much disrespect from clients, from colleagues, and myself. So I started asking, what would I do if I already knew I was enough? And the answer was simple. I'd protect my energy like it was sacred, because it is. And finally, who could I become if I stopped managing outcomes and started managing energy? This question broke me open because the person I was trying to become, he was exhausted before he even got there. I was grinding to become someone who had made it, whatever that meant. Someone people looked up to, someone who never struggled. But that version of me didn't exist. And chasing him was killing the version of me that did. So I stopped trying to manage how things turned out. I stopped white knuckling my way through life, trying to control every variable. And I started asking, what does my nervous system need today? What does my spirit need? What would make me feel alive, not just accomplished? I started building my days around alignment, not achievement. I hired help so I wasn't doing everything myself. I said no to money that came with conditions that I couldn't live with. I took Fridays off, not because I earned it, but because rest is not a reward, it's a requirement. And that version of me that showed up after that, calm, clear, present. Not because I figured it all out, but because I stopped pretending I had to. That's the real progress. Progress that doesn't require proof. Progress that feels like peace. Because the real flex isn't how much you can handle, it's how little you tolerate that isn't aligned. You don't need to chase progress. You need to honor pace. This is unhustling, where we build slower, breathe deeper, and still get it all done on our own terms. I'm Luis Baez. I'm in your corner. Bye for now. You've been listening to Unhustling with Luis Baez. If this episode resonated, then share it with someone who needs to hear it. New episodes drop every Sunday. Subscribe at unhustling.com so you never miss one.